Welcome to the Steel City. Is everybody ready to go? Let's proclaim the greatest radio show.
Welcome everyone to The Spread. I'm your host Jim Sella here with Jay Dash. Going to talk some Bucco baseball today. Dash, does no Marte mean no playoffs for the Pirates?
Well, that seems to be what's going around social media, and even the analysts around baseball think, I mean, it is a huge loss. There's no doubt about it. Starling Marte, one of the best hitters on this team. But I think there's a lot of positives outside of Marte, obviously, a lot of positives around this team that can keep him in the playoffs. And let's not forget, Marte is going to return after an 80-game suspension, now 78 games, although they're 0-2 without him so far. But I think more importantly is if they are able to stay in this chase and maybe make a wild card or something, he's not going to be in the playoffs, and that's even bigger to me. So I want to know if they do make it to the playoffs late in the season, if they see they're going to be in the playoffs, are they going to back off of Marte at the end of the season, or are they just going to ride him out into the playoffs and then completely switch up the outfield straight into the playoffs, you know?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and I really feel like I don't think it's so much just the loss of Marte that's scaring everybody, but the fact that Gung is still in limbo and nobody knows what's going to happen to him. So you're almost losing your two best hitters. I mean, because Marte is a great all-around hitter who has shown some more power than he had last year, and Gung was obviously the best power hitter in that lineup. So I think losing those two things really puts a damper on the Pirate bats. And I mean, we've seen it in the last 3 games. They lost 2-1 in all 3 games.
Yeah, well, it's still early, so the offense, there is some things here that I think we'll pick up, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Gung does have a hearing on May 25th, so there is a chance he can get his visa around that time. And if that would happen, that's about a month from now, a little over a month. It'll probably take him about 2 weeks to get in to being game ready. So at best, I'm thinking a month and a half, maybe 2 months for Jung Ho Gung. But David Freese has stepped in very nice for Jung Ho Gung. And I'm not saying David Freese is going to hit 350 by the end of the season and have a 500 on base percentage or anything. That's not going to happen. He's going to cool off. But we do know he is a major league ball player. He's an above average player, and he can produce for you. So he has stepped in nicely so far. If you can get Gung back in a month and a half, 2 months, maybe he can keep hitting until then, so it's not that big of a loss. And if Gung does come back, you can move David Freese to first if Bell doesn't figure it out by then. But we'll talk about Bell in a second as well. But I think there's only one position in all of sports. If you lose that player, you're pretty much done for the season, and that is quarterback. I mean, you can't lose your quarterback in football. I mean, the Penguins have shown it. They lost Crosby and we're okay. Even the Steelers, they've lost players left and right and showed they were okay. But if you lose Ben, you're beat. So I think it's a little tougher in baseball, though, because you don't have backups like you do in football. I mean, they went out and signed a D'Angelo Williams, you know what I mean, in football to back up Le'Veon Bell. It's harder to do that in baseball. You can't just sign a starter, have him on your bench for when someone gets suspended, you know what I mean?
Right.
But a couple other things here. I was talking about, before Marte got suspended, I was talking about Adam Frazier and how he's matched his production this season from last season. He's hitting 300. He has that nice on-base percentage. He's not going to give you a ton of power, but he already does have a home run this season. And I wanted to see him get more playing time, and I was wondering how they were going to get him more playing time. This isn't the way I wanted it to happen, obviously, with Starling Marte going down. That's the last thing I wanted to see. But it is nice to see Adam Frazier get a long look. Hopefully he is the one that takes up most of this playing time in the outfield. There is Gregory Polanco hasn't even got going yet. We've seen in the World Baseball Classic he was killing it, and he got off to a little bit of a slow start here. Not necessarily a completely slow start. He just hasn't found his power stroke yet, and I believe that's going to come along. I think that can help this team out moving forward offensively. Andrew McCutchen could give this team a boost with increased production as well. He actually had a 9-game hitting streak, just snapped last game against the St. Louis Cardinals. Since they moved him into center field, he's made some nice plays, man. He already has a diving catch, and he's made probably 3 or 4 nice plays out there. He looks, when they interviewed him, he sounded depressed. He didn't want to move back to center field. But they asked him about Marte in the same sentence, so he was kind of down about losing Marte, but it looks like he's excited to be back out in center field, and hopefully he can return. Last year, he was one of the worst defensive center fielders in the game. Prior to that, he was a Gold Glove center fielder, so maybe he can take a step forward on the field, and that could go a long way as well. But really, at the plate, he's the guy. I mean, if he could step up, and he doesn't even have to be that MVP type guy, but if he could just step up and be a leader to this offense, I think it could go a long way as well.
Did you see? I didn't see it. I read about it, so I'm actually curious if it really happened. Apparently, Kutch made a really good catch, like a running catch in the outfield, and then screamed, "This is my spot!" out in the field.
I did not see that. I don't know if that's true or not.
I was just curious. The picture they used for the article, his face looked hilarious. I don't know how it's not the #1 internet meme. His eyes were like bugging out of his head as he's catching this ball. I don't even know if it was actually a picture of that play or just, some random internet picture that they found, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised they put Kutch back in center field. I mean, you asked me, what's the outfield going to look like? And that was the last thing I thought. I thought they'd keep him in right field, move Polanco to center field after what McCutchen did last season in center field. And really, now that he's just getting used to right field, I thought they'd want to keep him there because they figured that's his long-term position now. And I guess it kind of helps if you're going to trade him still. Let's say the Pirates don't make it at the deadline. You can tell they're not going to be in it. Well, it's nice to have him as a center fielder to trade rather than a right fielder. It gives him a little bit more value.
Do you think it has something to do with who he is in the clubhouse that he got moved back to center? Not that he went in and was like, okay, now you have to put me back, but kind of just like a respect thing where they're like, all right, we kind of degraded him enough. It would be even more degrading to put somebody else in center now, so they kind of just move him back. Kind of stroke that ego.
I don't know if it's that because, I mean, really, Gregory Polanco is a natural center fielder, and he's younger, he's faster, so I think it has more to do with they know that Marte is a huge loss, and they need someone to step up and lead this team, and they know it has to be Andrew McCutchen, so they want to put him back in center and just let him prove that he can be that old ball player that he was a couple years ago.
So if at the deadline they're terrible, just say they're not even close, there's no way they're going to make the playoffs, do they have a fire sale?
Fire sale, no. McCutchen's definitely on the block. I mean, you could see David Freese on the block for sure. They're not going to get rid of Josh Bell, Jameson Taillon. Even Garrett Cole, I would doubt this season at least. I mean, you still got a couple seasons left with him. They're not going to trade Polanco, obviously. They just signed him to a long-term deal. Cervelli, they're not going to get rid of. They just re-signed him. You sent me an email about Cervelli. That it was blank. The image was blank, so I didn't get to see it.
Here, hold on. I'll read it to you. I think I still have it on my phone. Yeah, it was from some moron on Facebook who I'm not even going to say his name because I don't want to give him credit for it. He said, Cervelli needs to go too. It's beyond me why the Pirates gave him that contract. Might be very hard to move, but if they can find some GM to take that contract, bring up Diaz. He isn't getting any younger. Cervelli has played very well his whole time in Pittsburgh. Why? I'm a Pirate hater. I mean, I'm tough on these guys. I was extremely tough on Pedro Alvarez and other players. But Cervelli, what negative has he had at all since he's come to this organization?
Well, listen, 16 games into the season, is that where we're at? 15 games, I think it is, into the season. His average isn't where people want it. But really, a 3-for-3 game, and then it will be where they want it. That's the problem people have. That's what the problem with social media. People don't understand baseball and how you just got to let it ride out for a little bit. Cervelli, he's hitting the ball harder than anybody on his team, besides maybe David Freese. David Freese was killing the ball there, although he cooled off a little bit this last series. Cervelli has been hitting the ball harder than anybody on his team. The balls have just not been dropping in right now, and that's the thing about baseball. Something's going to change with that. Those balls will start to drop in. He's already hit 2 home runs. He's doubled his home run total from last season. So there is nothing wrong with Cervelli. He defensively, he's great too. Obviously, pitch framing, he's one of the best in baseball. And right now, this is what's going to keep this team in it, is this starting rotation. And Cervelli is a huge part of this starting rotation and keeping this young staff in control.
Now, if the pitching can keep it going, if they can find some timely hitting, they can try to make it into the playoffs, but I don't think I'm as optimistic about it as you are. I'm not going to say that there's no way. I've also heard some people say there's absolutely no way. Like you said a few minutes ago, you kind of got to let things ride out in baseball. It's a long season. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, say the Cubs lose Arrieta and Schwarber again, or you know what I mean? One or two guys. Like anything can happen to these other teams at the same time. Like the Pirates aren't the only organization having some bad luck in Major League Baseball. It happens to every team at some point in the year. You'll go through a struggle. I'm not quite as optimistic that they can get into the playoffs, mostly because, like what I said a little bit ago, Marte is probably one of their most consistent hitters, if not the most consistent, and Gung is that power hitter. So it's going to be harder now, obviously, for them to get the runs by stringing these hits together because they lost one of their most consistent hitters, and then they don't have that quick score, with the home run. And people could step up, like they could make up the paces for both these guys. I'm not saying it can't happen. It's definitely going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it happen in the past. When Ryan Braun went down, the Milwaukee Brewers actually got a little bit better. I mean, everybody stepped up around him, so that's possible too. And it doesn't mean Marte's going to come back and be a bum because he's not on steroids now or something either. There's a lot of players that come back from it and play very well. D. Gordon, Ryan Braun, Nelson Cruz, there's a lot of them. So it's not like Marte can't produce when he comes back as well. But another guy that could step up is Josh Bell, man. This guy could really increase his production. We know that he got off to a slow start this season, but he had knee surgery and he got a late start to the spring. You can see that his timing is off right now, but he did just hit his first home run last game, so maybe that'll get him going as well. And this is a guy they didn't really have in the offense last season. If he can step up and be that hitter he showed in the minor leagues, that could change this offense immediately. And let's not forget, we have one of the top prospects in baseball, Austin Meadows, who I believe will be called up before Marte's suspension is over. It could be as early as 2 weeks from now if he starts crushing the ball in AAA, which he hasn't done yet. He's starting to pick it up a little bit. I think that's why he didn't get called up already. If he was mashing the ball in AAA to start the season, he'd have got called up already. So if he could start hitting, gets called up, maybe it's even a month. Let's say he gets called up in a month. Austin Meadows is a difference maker, can be a difference maker. It's obviously hard in a debut season, but this guy could step right in and give you similar numbers to Starling Marte. Obviously not on the base pass. You're really not going to be able to make that up. There's no one on this team that matches Marte's speed besides maybe Alan Hansen. And you're not going to throw him into the starting lineup right now. But he's been a nice cog for this team as well late in games, putting him in as a base runner. That he actually helped win a couple games against the Cubs there in that Cubs series. But to me, go ahead, man.
I've heard some people say that Meadows won't be called up till as late as June.
I could definitely see him being called up a little earlier than that, but it wouldn't surprise me either if it was June. I mean, that's what? About a month away, like I said, right?
Yeah, a little over.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's definitely possible, and I wouldn't be mad at him for doing it because I do want Austin Meadows on his team as long as possible. But like I mentioned the rotation already, I think that's the biggest key here. The top four have looked great so far. Garrett Cole had that one bad 1/3 of an inning really in the first game of the season, let up 5 runs in the 5th inning after recording 2 outs in that inning already. But outside of that, Garrett Cole has looked fantastic. Jameson Taillon has been unstoppable to this point. Vaughn Nova's matching what he did last season with the Pirates. And Chad Kuhl has really taken a step forward so far. Now, again, a couple of these guys are young, so we have to let it play out a little bit longer. But right now, the top 4 in his pitching staff look great. And really, Glass now, a lot of the analysts are saying his last start was encouraging, and they're going to keep him in the rotation moving forward. After that 2-run homer he led up to Chris Bryant in the 1st inning, actually the first batter of the game, Kyle Schwarber, hit a nubber off the end of the bat and it turned into a double. So that was a fluke hit right there. And then Chris Bryant launched one off of him. But after that, man, he started dealing. He was showing some nasty stuff. And more importantly, he was throwing his changeup more than any other pitch and was throwing it for a strike, and it was confusing hitters. That is the pitch that they wanted him to figure out. Remember, he had the nice curveball, the big fastball. but he didn't have that changeup worked out correctly so far. But he showed it in his game. It worked really well. He had 7 Ks. He only walked 2 people. The defense didn't help him out at all in that game. They played Adam Frazier at shortstop. Think about this. In a game that Tyler Glasnow's pitching, a guy you got to help out because he just had a terrible start to open the season. He couldn't keep his control intact. You have to help this guy out. So they put Adam Frazier at short that day. It made no sense at all. It was a terrible call, but the defense didn't help him out. I think Josh Harrison made a mistake in left field that day as well. And the umpire didn't help him out either, man. He struck out 2 batters that ended up, that the umpire called a ball on the 3rd strike, and both of those batters ended up hitting in RBIs, man. So that really hurt him as well. But he had 7 Ks, and he didn't walk a batter until his final inning. He walked 2 batters and hit a batter, loaded the bases, and still got out of it. So I'm excited to see if Glasnow can take a step forward from his last start. He's really the wild card, man. If he could pitch like he did from the 3rd batter on in that Cubs game, this guy could really turn this rotation into one of the better rotations in the National League, in Major League Baseball, really, because the National League has better rotations anyway. I don't think they're going to match the Mets, maybe the Nationals, but any of these other teams, even the Cubs, man, the Cubs' back end of the rotation does not look good. You remember me mentioning Kyle Hendricks should take a step back this season. So far, he has not looked very good at all, and they have Brett Anderson as their 5th starter right now. That guy, he was good back in the day for the A's, but right now and over the past couple years, he hasn't been good, and right now he's still in the rotation. He just got lit up the other day. So the Cubs have questions too. It's not like everything's good to go for them. They have some things to figure out in their rotation, and the Cardinals have some things to figure out in their offense. Obviously, yes, they swept the Pirates, but they only scored 6 runs in that series. That was the first time ever in Pirates history that they got swept in a series and let up 6 earned runs in the entire series. So yes, the Pirates offense is struggling right now, but these other teams that they're going to be battling later in the season have some questions to figure out as well.
I'm almost more afraid of the Cardinals in a way. I know the Cubs probably have more talent, but it just seems like the Cardinals are one of those teams in sports that always figure it out, you know what I mean, to kind of make a run at it at least. The Cubs, you don't really know what you're going to get. They're a very young team. They have a lot of offense, but like you said, their back-end pitching is struggling. So it'll be up to that bullpen to see if they can help those back-end starters out in a couple games and squeeze out a couple victories.
And that happened yesterday. Wade Davis came in, their closer, pitched the 9th inning when they were losing. And the Cubs, like you mentioned, they have that offense. They went and scored 4 runs in the 9th inning to beat the Brewers. They actually, 2 days in a row, they beat the Brewers when the Brewers had them beat, and they came back in the end and beat them.
Talent-wise, I guess I would still say it goes Cubs, Cards, Pirates. Maybe the Cards and the Pirates are on the same level, like a 2A, 2B type thing. It's just, like I said, it's scary that those Cards, no matter who's there, the management, it's just one of those franchises that knows how to win.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Cubs are number 1, and then you got Cards and Pirates either way.
The other teams I don't really care about. Aren't the Brewers leading the division right now?
No, it's the Cincinnati Reds, man.
The Reds.
They got some young pitching out there that look very good early. I expect it to start to struggle at some point. And Billy Hamilton has looked like a beast so far. I don't see them staying at the top of the division. That's why it's too early, man. When you see the Reds at the top of the division, you see the Diamondbacks, the Colorado Rockies at the top, you see the Cubs in the middle, the Pirates and Cardinals at the bottom. The Giants are at the bottom of their division. None of this stuff is going to happen, man. You got to let it play out.
No team from Cincinnati is any good in any sport. A bunch of choke artists.
And I'll say this, too. It's nice that Marte got suspended early in the season. Well, it's not nice that he got suspended, but early in the season rather than later, because teams are still trying to figure out how to utilize all their players and everything right now, too. So maybe there's a week or two where it doesn't hurt as much because there's other teams still trying to figure some things out right now as well.
What about that Buster Olney report that we talked about the other day? How garbage was that of an article?
Yeah, Buster's an idiot, man. He was kind of talking about they signed him to be the face of the franchise after McCutcheon leaves, and now there's no chance of that, although I don't even believe that. Just because he got busted doing steroids. People, I mean...
All it's going to take is a good season from Marte, and people are going to forget it just like that.
Yeah, and he's saying there's no way that they can get the return they need from that contract. That contract's like $31 million, dude. He already outplayed it.
Believe it. It's ridiculous that he even said that, and people take it seriously and then regurgitate it all over social media. It's very annoying.
Yeah, so I think it's okay. I think it's a huge loss, obviously. What really can help is the stuff I mentioned, but getting Gung back here in this offense would be nice as well. It's at least going to be a month and a half, I would say, though.
Yeah, I think they could survive without one or the other, but if they have to go the full 80 without Marte and then Gung never makes it back, then I think it's really just going to be hard for them to score runs. But if they can get either one of those guys back, all they got to do is hover around 500 for the time being.
Or get Austin Meadows up here, man. Who knows?
Yeah, you're right, if he starts hitting. I mean, they just need one more bat in the lineup is basically it. You know, if they
see, the thing is, I like Frazier. I think Frazier can be a starter. It's just the other things Marte brings. He's a Gold Glove defender. He's
Right.
all over the base pass. That Frazier cannot match this stuff.
Sometimes Marte is a little too squirrely on the base pass.
That's all right. You're an aggressive team, man. Those mistakes are going to happen.
It's just hilarious when he like almost blatantly overruns a bag sometimes.
Yeah, who was it? Somebody,
So-
Alan Hansen, I think, man. He looked good when he was sliding. I turned to Madden as soon as he made a slide, and I was like, he needs to talk to Marte and show him how to do it.
Instead of just running full speed and not being able to stop.
But that's it, man. I think everything's going to be okay. Just because there's no team that was as dominant as the Cubs were last season. Even the Cubs themselves, I think, have some questions to figure out, especially in the rotation. The rotation, I mean, we mentioned it how many times. The rotation, the pitching staff as a whole is more important than the offense. And right now, the Pirates' pitching looks pretty good to me, so that's more important. If the Pirates had what they were doing early in the season last year with their rotation, maybe I'd have a different tune.
I think people were focused on the wrong part of the suspension, and you know, like you said, they'll be okay through the regular season. But at the beginning of the episode, we talked about how he's going to miss the playoffs. I think that's really the key. And I know that the Pirates have to make the playoffs first, so they have to be able to, you know, win regular season games to get there. But just like you said, there's no team running away with it right now. It doesn't look like there's going to be a 95 to 100 win team coming out of the NL at least. So you're looking at probably anywhere between like 83 to 88 wins to squeeze you into that wild card spot.
Possibly.
Kind of at the pace that they're going. And it's not unconceivable for the Pirates to get that wild card spot still. Just, it's really going to be hard to win in the playoffs without Marte.
Yeah, that's what sucks. That's why at the end of the season, if you have a good feeling you're gonna be in the playoffs, although it's so hard to tell even with 2 weeks left in the season if you're
Right.
gonna be in the playoffs or not. I don't want Marte playing every single day just to get you there, and then you have to take him out and change your entire outfield. And that's another thing. We don't have the best outfield in baseball this season now, just because Marte is suspended.
When did he test positive? Was it before the season, after last season, or during? I'm not even sure.
Honestly, it would have. I mean, if he tested positive before the season, they couldn't have let him play the first few weeks. So he might have taken the test then, but they actually didn't test the results or get the results back until the other day when they suspended him.
I just wasn't sure if there was an appeal process or whatever that he might
No,
have
he
been
didn't
able to
appeal.
go through. Oh yeah, he didn't appeal, huh?
No, he knew
He
it.
should own up and just say I was stupid and took it though. I didn't like his I didn't know what I was taking excuse, considering what he took is only an injectable
Well, I
steroid.
heard this is an old drug, man, and they don't even use it anymore. And he probably didn't even take this stuff. He was probably taking a newer steroid that is undetectable, but the container it was kept in had some of this old stuff like on the sides of it probably. So that's what got him. But he was doing steroids. He was just doing a newer kind probably, and this was mixed in from old bottles.
And I know this is really just a big joke, but a lot of people are saying he took them because he only hit 9 home runs last year.
I doubt it. I would have to guess he was on steroids before.
You think he's been on them his whole career?
I don't know. Well, maybe not his whole career.
Well, his whole big league career, I guess I should say.
I mean, it's possible, man. I think that's more likely when guys get busted that they've been doing it, right?
Yeah. Well, today is 420, which opens up the NFL's window for drug testing. Who do you think's going to be the first guy to get popped there?
Martavis
Le'Veon
Bryant.
Bell. It's probably going to be one of those two.
If it's Bell, man, just get rid of him. If Bell's stupid enough to get busted again, screw him.
Hey, and Bryant's already been busted more than Bell, so.
Yeah, I know, but we don't expect much from Bryant.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's all I got for today. Anything else for the fans?
Nah, man.
Fans, any questions or comments? Hit us up on Twitter at bet_the_spread. Hit me up on Twitter at betjimthewin. Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/betthespread. Go ahead and throw your comments there, good or bad. Whatever you want to do. Doesn't really matter. Come back to YouTube, click subscribe, tell your friends. Pray for them Buccos. They're going to need some help from the Lord for this season.